Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
This is a catastrophe.
You are now listening to The Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Renaissance Homes and Pools on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
That's what I wished for when I blew out my candle.
Locking down the middle of the day. Live from the Raising Cane studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
The floor is yours.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer not coming to you from the Raising Cane studio downtown in the capital city. Instead, day 3 from Radio Row SEC Media Days 2026 in Tampa. And glad you are hanging out with us. Plenty to get to over the course of the next 2 hours. Visiting with the media today, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Alabama, and let's see if I can come up with the fourth one. Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Alabama, and Florida. John Sumrall was with us a little bit earlier as well. So, yeah, it's been an entertaining day, a fun day here thus far on this Wednesday. So we'll talk about all of those teams. J.D. Pickell is going to jump aboard. He's got to talk to John Sumrall for his show, and then after he finishes that, he's going to come hang out with us for a little bit. So we'll get to guests as they show up over the course of the next 2 hours. Fired up. You were here, Jordan Kitchens and Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. Our Wednesday shows always brought to you by Renaissance Homes and Pools. And, of course, our coverage all week long brought to you by FMOL Health, Our Lady of the Lake, Parish Construction and Roofing, Relief Windows, and Rev Fiber. We're off and running. It's our opening drive.
Welcome to the big league.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive. Presented by Fabry Chevrolet GMC in St. Francisville.
So let's get started. The day started, day 3. We've kind of been here for a while now, entrenched. Some people a little bit more tired than others. And we got Kalen DeBoer first in the main ballroom. And I'll just be pretty candid. It was remarkably boring for 20 minutes. There was just absolutely nothing, no personality, no substance, no nothing from Kalen DeBoer. That doesn't mean he's a bad coach or Alabama's not going to be any good. It just means it was pretty worthless from a content perspective. However, things turned around because John Sumrall was awesome in the main ballroom. I had not paid much attention to him at Tulane, didn't catch much Florida spring football updates, but he was really candid, really personal, funny, witty, informative, passionate. He had a great disposition up there and was great. And I just listened to about 70% of what Pete Golding had to say at the podium, and he was awesome too. Very relaxed, very candid, which is you're not always. Like, sometimes those guys get up there and they give canned answers, then they get poor questions, and it's just not a lot of juice over 20, 25 minutes. The last 2 coaches have been awesome. So let's start with Pete Golding because there's a local angle to that. There's a local angle to Sumrall as well, which we'll get to in our next segment. But I want to talk about Golding. One of the first questions to Pete Golding was, what's your relationship like with Lane Kiffin? And I think obviously those in Oxford hope that he say, yeah, well, that guy bailed on us, he quit, and we're moving on without him. It wasn't like that at all. He just said, look, I didn't know Lane Kiffin when I took the job at Ole Miss. People think we knew each other at Alabama. We didn't because we weren't at Alabama at the same time. He was there before Pete Golding. And so I hired him because I wanted to move to Oxford to raise my, I got hired because I wanted to move to Oxford to raise my family, and we spent 3.5 years together and have a great relationship. Lane Kiffin decided he wanted to move on and do something different, and that's okay, and he harbors no ill will for him, and Lane's competitive. They still talk, they still text. They're on really good terms. So as salty and spicy and awful as the LSU Ole Miss fan rivalry is on the internet streets, and as toxic as that town is going to be when LSU goes there in week 3 in September, that's not the case with the people inside the programs. It's not the case with Lane Kiffin. It's not the case with Pete Golding. That shouldn't come as a huge surprise, but these coaches understand taking new jobs because they all do it all the time. Position coaches, coordinators, head coaches, nobody stays anywhere longer than 4 or 5 years. You either get fired or you move up. And Lane Kiffin was at Ole Miss for 6, 7 years and decided, hey, I want to take the next step. And Pete Golding gets that. And guess what? That opportunity that Pete Golding now has came because Lane Kiffin hired him at Ole Miss. They won a lot of games together. Lane did what coaches do, and Pete Golding now finds himself in the head seat in Oxford. So I thought that was an interesting talking point. The most passionate Pete Golding got the entire time I saw him on the stage. I had to come over and get set up for the show, so missed the last, like I said, 30% or so. But the most passionate thing Pete Golding was talking about was tampering. He was asked about tampering 3 times. We know that Ole Miss got in some hot water in terms of the rumor mill, not necessarily any punishment that they got, but they got into some hot water with the Luke Ferrelli situation. If you're not familiar, Luke Ferrelli was transferring from Cal, and he transferred to Clemson. And he was enrolled at Clemson. He was in class at Clemson. And Ole Miss continued to pursue him, and he decided to go to Ole Miss and left the Clemson program. That's when Dabo Swinney went out in that press conference and pulled out the receipts from all the text messages and just started cycling through the whole thing and called Ole Miss out for tampering with timestamps. And nobody in Oxford really cared because Luke Ferrelli plays for Ole Miss now. And what Pete Golding said, I don't have a problem with. What he said was, if you quit your job, would you quit your job without another place to go? Or would you talk to that other place, see what the offer might be, what the opportunity might be while you're still employed with your current job? And then if you decide to make the move, then you quit your current job and you take the new one. It happens in every industry. It happens in coaching. It happens with athletic directors. It happens all over the place. And now it's an opportunity in college football. Do I wish that players and coaches didn't recruit players who were actively on other rosters? Yeah, I wish they wouldn't do that. I wish you could just wave a wand and no one did that, right? It would make life simpler. But I'm not going to chastise a coach for recruiting players in this era. I'm just not. And that's what Pete Golding said. He's like, we're going to recruit the best players. And he went as far as to say, and I really appreciate this, because I've talked to y'all about like PR stuff and about how I don't like a lot of the things that happen in press conferences because they're so canned and so impersonal. He said, I've been coached to answer this question a certain way, and I'm just not going to do it. And that warmed my heart, because I would like you to tell the truth. And he didn't go as far as say, yeah, we're going to tamper with everybody. He's not dumb, but he essentially implied that. I certainly inferred that when he was saying, look, we're going to go recruit players, and yeah, there are going to be times where there are guys that are in the portal and we may talk to agents. Like, that's just the nature of getting rosters together, because if you don't do that, you're going to get left behind. We make fun of Dabo all the time because he won't do what is required. And sometimes that's being a little aggressive and bending some rules. And, like, again, I wish it didn't have to happen, but I'm not going to jump down Pete Golding's throat for texting Luke Ferrelli. I'm just not going to do it. And I do think that his answer on that was reasonable. If you apply this to the real world, everyone tampers with everyone. That's how the job market works. And so if you hire someone who's employed somewhere else, you're oftentimes talking to them about a new opportunity while they're still working at that spot. And that's not a way that I've heard anyone actually bring it up. The counter to that point would be, well, it's against the rules, so don't do it. I just don't really care. There are some rules that are in place in college athletics that I just don't really care about. I never got all up in a tizzy when Will Wade was getting in trouble pre-NIL, because I just felt like that's just par for the course. And Pete Golding brought that up, not the Will Wade situation, but he said, look, let's not act like college sports recruiting has just been on this moral high ground for 100 years. It was an incredibly refreshing answer. And I know that my listeners in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, who love LSU, do not like Ole Miss, have had that dislike for Ole Miss ratcheted up based on what has gone on in the last 8 months. Don't want to hear me talking positively about what the Ole Miss coach has to say, but I'm going to tell you the truth. I thought it was a refreshing 20 minutes that I listened to Pete Golding in. And I'm sitting here staring at Rivers in her Mississippi State blood, and she's bummed out because she liked the way that Pete Golding was talking up there. It was just a refreshing deal. Now, he did drop a curse word, as John Sumrall did. Every single person who has heard Pete Golding talk said before he got up there he would definitely cuss, and he dropped a BS in there. He was talking about having a lot of people on his staff to deal with that, quote, BS, so he didn't have to deal with it. He just wants to recruit and coach ball. So he did get there, but I didn't hear another one. No, we did get 3, so never mind. I stand corrected. We got to 3 in the 30 minutes, and that was kind of the betting over-under with Pete Golding. But to talk about Ole Miss entirely and not just Pete Golding's time up on the podium, I've said this many times. If you're telling me that the stock market price for Ole Miss is the Kiffin era, which is just about an average of 10 wins a season, I'm going to sell the Ole Miss stock, because I don't think Pete Golding for the next 5 years is going to win 50 games. I don't see them sustaining that. The people in Oxford would suggest to you, hey, we're going to keep this Grove Collective working. We've got a great athletic director and a great chancellor, and we've got the guy who's done a lot of the recruiting for Lane Kiffin's staff, and Pete Golding now running the show, and we brought in an offensive coordinator that knows Kiffin's system, and we're just going to keep rolling with Trinidad Chambliss and Kewan Lacey, and we're going to be really, really good. I think they're going to be good this year. I don't think they're going to be a college football playoff contender year in and year out over the course of a 5-year Pete Golding era, because I just think that Lane Kiffin's offense and Charlie Weiss's brain power and what those two dudes did to continuously put up points is going to be hard for them to continue to replicate. I think that Kiffin's a big part of this deal. So I would sell it, but I don't think that it's just going to be a deal where Ole Miss falls off a cliff. This year, with that quarterback, that running back, and the defensive nuts and bolts that Pete Golding has assembled that didn't really get dented by LSU in a major way, other than you obviously lose Daugherty and Newman Mielen, who are not necessarily huge pro prospects, but were very productive players for Ole Miss. I think they can get the next guy up at that position and play very well. Their schedule is a problem if you're Ole Miss. I don't anticipate them having trouble with Louisville, but LSU is a tough game. At Texas is a brutal game. Georgia coming into Oxford is a brutal game. You do have to go to Oklahoma again. So there are some landmines there, and I think that they probably lose 3 games. That's my prediction for Ole Miss at this point. Again, I think they'll be pretty good, and I think it'll be a slow decline. It's just not, I don't think they can sustain in Oxford what Lane Kiffin did, which was 50 wins in 5 years. It just seems like a lot. It was a heck of a run last year, and I think that Ole Miss fans will probably look back at that and go, that was our chance. That was the chance to really make a splash and get it done. I don't know how they would have stood up to Indiana. That was a really good team that Kirk Cignetti had there, but that was maybe their chance to get it done, and they got all the way to a lead with 11 seconds left in the semifinal, and it all went away. But I was impressed with Pete Golding on the microphone earlier today. I thought it was great. I was also very impressed with a guy with Louisiana, another guy with Louisiana roots. Both of them do. John Sumrall. We're talking about Florida, and we'll do that when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Heat stroke's a major risk, especially for young athletes this time of year. So do what you can to try to prevent those heat-induced episodes. You can wear loose and breathable gear, work out outside of the peak hours, maybe early in the morning or later in the evening. Drink water and low-sugar electrolyte drinks. You can skip the alcohol. That'll dehydrate you really quickly. Use sunscreen and sunglasses. Those not only protect you from UV, but they also cool you off. Know your limits. That's probably the most important thing I will tell you. If you feel off, just stop. Shut it down. It's not worth pushing it in this part of the world, South Louisiana, in this time of the year. It's just really, really hot. If you are dehydrated, you need medical attention, find your nearest Ochsner Urgent Care at ochsner.org/UC. That's ochsner.org/UC.
Live from the 2026 SEC Football Media Days in Tampa. Presented by FMOL Health, Our Lady of the Lake, Relief Windows, Rev Fiber, and Parrish Construction and Roofing.
Back here on Radio Row, SEC Media Days 2026. We're brought to you every day by my friends over at Marucci. It is summertime. It is hot, but you still want to get some swings in. If you're a youth baseball or softball player, you can beat the heat, beat the rain as well, which is coming to South Louisiana at the moment. You can do that at Marucci at the Hitter's House. Get a membership. You get key card access to the Hitter's House. You can take some swings 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can do it in the morning, at lunchtime, after mom and dad get off work. It's just a great resource in Baton Rouge, a wonderful facility. So if you're looking for an opportunity to hit some baseballs, hit some softballs, work on some pitching, it can all be done there at Marucci in the Hitter's House. Get that membership access. You can check them out online at maruccisports.com. That's maruccisports.com. All right, we spoke about Ole Miss, who is going through the quote-unquote car wash right now. Florida was earlier this morning. John Sumrall still hanging around. He was doing some interviews just behind us momentarily, and it's going to be with D. Pickell here coming up in a few minutes, and then JD's going to chat with us, maybe get an intel on what that conversation was like. But I'll tell you this. As I mentioned at the top of the show, I have not heard John Sumrall talk a ton, a little bit in his time at Tulane, and then, of course, when he left and took the Florida job. But today, he got a lot of exposure to him, and he was just really, really impressive. I think a lot of folks that follow Tulane closely in South Louisiana are certainly aware of that, but I absolutely was impressed earlier today. He talked about a few different things that I want to touch on, and then we'll get to some of the funnier stuff that he had to say later on. But the local angle for Florida, who LSU does not play this year, was talking about November of last year. because John Sumrall was a very hot name in the coaching market. You knew that the LSU job was open. You knew that the Ole Miss job might come open. Arkansas was open. Auburn was open. Florida was open. There were a lot of different opportunities for coaches to graduate from the lower levels, and with Sumrall winning his league at Tulane, his name was right there. And he was asked about the difference between him leaving for Tulane, for Florida, and still coaching Tulane, and then Kiffin not sticking around with his team at Ole Miss. And this was the quote that Sumrall gave. He said, I would say no two decisions are alike. Lane and I are friends, and we talked several times through the process of October, November about what it was looking like for both of our schedules and how things were going to unfold. He was like, you and I are going through the same thing in November. And I was like, no, Lane, we're not. If you leave, you're leaving an SEC school to go to another SEC school. It's a little different. I'm leaving Tulane. Sumrall then continued, he said, I wouldn't have done it any other way. I may have on the front end maybe not been at my best every second for Florida because I wanted to make sure I left Tulane the right way. If any university told me I couldn't coach in the playoff game, I don't think I would have taken the job just because I couldn't leave the team I had coached all year. And so I think that's all probably true. I don't buy Sumrall's premise that he would not have taken the Florida job. I just think he wanted to coach the team, and I think it was evident that Florida was going to let him do that. It's hard for me to get on board with Florida says you need to come now. You cannot coach Tulane in the playoff. Then he stays at Tulane and turns down the Florida Gators. That to me is a stretch, and so we'll never know, but that to me is a stretch. He left on great terms. He coached Tulane in the bowl game. They got smoked. He left them a big NIL chunk of change on the way out, and then went to Gainesville and hit the ground running over there, started recruiting. But he also suggested that he didn't think that Lane butchered the situation. And here's the quote. He said, so the calendar we have in college football right now, going from being a one-semester sport essentially to now we're playing our championship game in late January, it doesn't match up with the movement of coaches and players very well, so it's cumbersome to say the least. I did not envy Lane's situation at all. When we would talk, I felt awful for what he was going through and everybody involved because it wasn't fair to anybody. And I don't think that's really off base. I think it's easy for an LSU fan to go, you're getting the LSU job, that's little old Ole Miss. Who cares? Just go get back to the playoff and go to a national championship game. Ha ha, laugh at Ole Miss. But when you really peel it back and look at it, it was a crappy situation that is only there because of the calendar. If you could back recruiting back up to February and back the portal up to January, and let these guys finish their seasons before they have to make a decision, go to a new place, and hit the ground running with a new staff and new team, then this would be avoidable. Lane Kiffin, if the old schedule was there, Lane Kiffin could have worked through the playoff with Ole Miss and then left for LSU. Now, the tension was mounting there because you have a contract extension from Keith Carter to Lane Kiffin that Lane Kiffin's not signing. And that's the evidence that I kept going back to, that if he was going to stay at Ole Miss, he would sign this extension. He didn't sign it. And LSU's just sitting there waiting in the weeds, and we knew where things were headed. But it was all because of the calendar. And that's what John Sumrall, that's the point he was making. Now, Sumrall had some humorous moments while he was up there at the podium. There was a reporter whose phone rang while he was actually answering one of these questions about Kiffin, because that part of the quote, I was looking at the transcription of the quotes online in the portal, and the part where he breaks off because the cell phone is ringing is in the middle of the quote I used for my story on LouisianaSports.net. I had to take it and edit it out. But he said that the reporter would have been kicked out of a team meeting, and that it was everything in his power not to throw the podium while the phone was ringing for 10 seconds in the ballroom. And then he talked about the playoff game with Tulane and Ole Miss and said that they beat the blank out of us. And then we played them in the playoff, and they beat the blank out of us. Again, he dropped two S-bombs that kind of loosened everybody up in the big ballroom. And he's got a rebuild on his hands here, because Billy Napier's Florida team just never got out of neutral the entire time. Finished last year 4-8. You knew the writing was on the wall for Billy Napier when they lost to South Florida in week 2. Of course, that was Alex Golesh, his quarterback, who's now at Auburn. They lost that game 18-16. They come to Baton Rouge. They play play LSU. You got DJ Lagway throwing 5 interceptions, lose that game, get absolutely housed by Miami. And at that point, you know that the Billy Napier era is over. But they somehow beat Texas in the Swamp. They never stopped fighting for Napier. They just weren't any good. They got hammered by Texas A&M, beat Mississippi State by 2. Then they lost to Georgia, and that's when the wheels fell off. They lose to Kentucky by 31 points, which is just inconceivable because that Kentucky team was awful. But by that time, Billy Napier was out of a job, and it was time to get things rolling in Gainesville. And so you got John Sumrall, who comes in, and he did not give a commitment to a quarterback, but we all feel like Aaron Philo is going to be the guy. He comes over from Georgia Tech with Buster Faulkner, who was calling the plays for Haynes King at Georgia Tech. But they're going to run everything through Jaden Ball. Jaden Ball is here today at SEC Media Days. He is big, he is physical, he is tough. He was a really good player on a really bad team in Gainesville last year. He was third in the SEC in rushing, went over 1,100 yards, had 8 touchdowns. They're going to run the ball a ton with him. I just don't know if they're going to be good enough. One thing that John Sumrall said today is that he was not impressed with the offensive line strength when he got to Gainesville. That's a red flag. If you've got an offensive line that can't move people, you're going to be in big trouble, especially with an inexperienced quarterback, a brand new coach, brand new weapons. All that goes into that. So that's a red flag for Florida. I don't like that at all. And then the schedule at Florida is always going to be pretty difficult. It's a soft open, but it ratchets up really, really good in the middle of October. They'll play Florida Atlantic, and then they'll play Campbell, so they'll be 2-0. They go to Auburn. That's an interesting game. I sat there in the media room, and I asked Chris Marler today. I was like, who's going to win the Auburn-Florida game in Auburn? He's like, Auburn. But that's a huge game for those two teams, for new coaches that come from the same conference to get that first big win. That would be huge. Then you got at Missouri, which will not be easy. They host South Carolina, and this is the point where the schedule turns for the worse on Florida. They got at Texas, then Georgia and Atlanta this year. It's not in Jacksonville. They're playing in Atlanta. Then they've got Oklahoma. They're at Kentucky, Vanderbilt, and then at Florida State. And who knows what you're going to get from that program these days. But that stretch where they got to go, where they've got Ole Miss, at Missouri, South Carolina, at Texas, Georgia, Oklahoma. That's going to be too much for them, I think, to overcome. This is a year where there's no expectation on Florida whatsoever. But today, listening to John Sumrall talk, I don't know anything about his X's and O's. I don't know anything about his ability to coach. But his personality, his demeanor, his delivery, just the way that he won at Troy and at Tulane, that feels to me like a pretty good hire. You never really know. I mean, everybody lauded the Brian Kelly hire at LSU, and it fell flat in year 4. So you never know. But I sense from listening to John Sumrall and then understanding what Florida can become with that recruiting base and that stadium and the tradition that they have. They've got to catch up from a facilities and NIL perspective, but I think they've got the alumni base to do that. I became a believer in John Sumrall today. I really thought he did a great job at the podium, and I don't think this year will be great for them, but I think that they will be good in time. So that's my thought on Ole Miss to start things and on the Florida Gators here as we chug along on SEC Football Media Days. We're brought to you by Renaissance Homes and Pools. They're online at builtbyrenaissance.com. That's builtbyrenaissance.com. We'll take a look and see what J.D. Pickell's up to. It looks like he's still working a little bit over there, so we'll get to him when he's available. I had a thought based on the schedule that's a little bit different than what I had been saying previously about LSU and rivalries and annual games. And it just dawned on me this morning. I wrote about it on LouisianaSports.net, and it's really evident on next year's schedule. So let's have a little bit of a generic SEC conversation, and when JD's done, he'll plop down and have a conversation with us. We're chugging along here on a Wednesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show from SEC Media Days in Tampa, Florida. Come back with us.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
First American Bank and Trust, FABT.com, FABT.com. That's First American Bank and Trust. Started up in 1910, 116 years later. They are still trucking 25 locations in southeast Louisiana, so there's always one near you. Whether you're in St. Tammany or Tangipahoa Parish, maybe you're over in Metairie, down the Bayou, St. John, Lafourche, Terrebonne, around Baton Rouge, Dutchtown, Jones Creek, First American Bank and Trust is there for you. It's local. if you're looking for a commercial loan, if you're looking for a personal loan, bank locally. And that doesn't mean bank with a small mom and pop shop that can't give you the resources that you need. No, 25 locations, they've got the resources. Every decision is made locally by First American Bank and Trust, by someone in Southeast Louisiana. It's First American Bank and Trust. Check them out online at FABT.com.
Live from the 2026 SEC Football Media Days in Tampa. Presented by Parish Construction and Roofing. FMOL Health, Our Lady of the Lake. Relief Windows. And Red Fiber.
SEC Media Days 2026, Day 3. It's Alabama, it's Florida, it's Texas A&M. It is, give me the last one. Give me the last one. It is Ole Miss, that's right. And it's J.D. Pickell, who's with us every single Wednesday during football season with us here at SEC Media Days. How are you, sir? It's great to see you.
This is one of my favorite events of the year.
It's fun.
Because we talk football, we all get together, but I get to sit in the seat right next to the man, the myth, the legend. The pride of Baton Rouge, Hunt Palmer.
That's me. You've been sitting next to really cool people all day, I've noticed, as I've walked by to get beverages and food and whatnot. You've got, who have we been talking to today?
You know, today we had Coach Sumrall, which was phenomenal.
I want to talk about that.
Got to talk to Vernell Brown and Marcel Reed, A&M's quarterback, and Mike Elko. It's been a lot of fun, and they've been really very gracious to us to give us some time.
Look, John Sumrall was right down the road from us in Baton Rouge. He was in New Orleans, obviously, but I didn't pay a lot of attention to Tulane. I've got a team to cover here, and so I didn't hear from him a lot. He blew me away in there today. I just thought his command of the room, his answers, I thought he was candid. I thought he was funny. I thought he was presentable. What is your take on what that era is going to look like in Gainesville?
Well, I want to mention what you just said a second ago, because everybody walking out of that big space walked out like they just saw the Odyssey in IMAX. Like, eyes big, like, whoa, that guy's sick. That's going to work. That's going to work. Like, even if, I even hear like Florida State fans or people that you know, aren't supposed to be Florida fans, like, yeah, I don't know about Florida, but I hope that guy wins. Like, that guy's awesome. There's something to that. I really believe there's something to that, and I think that people that are able to grip a room like that and generate belief usually there's a pretty good correlation and causation with being a great football coach and having your team believe in you. So if nothing else, I feel like Florida will just suck to play. And I don't know if that's really been the case consistently over the course of however many years. I think he would cut his arm off and bleed out at the 50 for a win, and Florida's missed that.
What's the infrastructure like at Florida? Are they ready to compete in this era? Like, I know in 2006 they were ready to roll. Just Urban Meyer can recruit 5 stars and stockpile them, and they were awesome. But they haven't been great for a while, and I'm just curious what you know about what the infrastructure's like and the cash flow and all that kind of stuff.
I'm making educated guesses here, Hunt,
right,
which is always a great place to be in the month of July, educated guesses. I believe they're at a tier that is competitive enough when the pocketbooks are open. I think we saw them win 7 games in 2024, and that equated to a top 10 recruiting class. So it's a place that, similar to LSU, if you have someone to activate the brand and activate belief, there is no shortage of people that are behind you and can be the wind beneath your wings. I would say, I think for Florida at a current roster level right now, their questions suck. Their questions terrify me. Like the offensive line and the quarterback in the middle of the defensive line.
So in there, Sumrall said, like, when I got to Gainesville, like, I was not impressed with our strength on the offensive line. I was like, well, that's not a good place to start.
In the SEC, like
that's not good.
You can maneuver around some things and hide some things. I don't think you can hide the offensive line. So that terrifies me. At the same time, I'm like, Jaden Bach can win you a game if you get enough of a push. Like, that receiver room is, I mean, an absolute deck of face cards. Like, you should be in a spot where if you can maximize what you're really good at, which I guess is the name of the game here, you got a chance.
All right, let's talk about Ole Miss. Pete Golding was up there. He was flying. He was kind of talking off the cuff. He said the #1 rule of their program is be a good dude, which I laughed at.
Yeah.
He said, so that's not that hard. So I thought that was good. I'm curious your thoughts on them. I said in the last segment, I would sell my 10-win stock of Ole Miss football, but I don't think they're going to crash and burn.
No, I'm in the same place as you. Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Hunt.
No, you're good.
I'm in the same place as you, man. Like, I can believe that in the preseason, Trinidad Chambliss is the best quarterback in the SEC and top 3 in the country, and still say, I'm a little bit nervous about the defensive line. Like, they allowed 4 yards a carry a year ago when they made it a minute inside of, playing for a national championship. The thing with me, Hunt, that's interesting, they missed, or excuse me, not missed, but they won like 4 one-score games.
Yeah.
Like they were 5-1, 4-1 in one-score games. I don't know how good I feel placing a bet on that transferring year over year. And so as much as you can like Trinidad and Keywan Lacey, and they're always going to be frisky, I don't know that you can recreate the magic that last year was in the same formula. Now, if I'm way off and the defensive line is worlds better and they're 2 yards a carry allowed operation, I'll eat my words. But until then, I think like 8-9 wins is a fair place to be.
I saw you chatting with Mike Elko for a while. I'm not the biggest A&M fan. I think that's been well publicized. However, I think he's really good, and I kind of like listening to him talk too. What did he have to say today?
He just seemed very at ease. You know, both him and Josh Heupel seemed a little bit more at ease than we're used to. But no, I mean, he seemed like he was encouraged from what last year was. He said he was encouraged from what last year was, but it's about doubling down. You know, there's a great piece of content Billy Lucci and Tex Ags are doing with their captain's dinner. And it's a bunch of the captains at A&M, and they're all sitting down having a conversation. And one of the common threads from our conversation with Elko and that piece of content is A&M doesn't feel like they've done anything yet. And if that ends up being more than just a slogan and something we're talking about, and really how that team feels, they have a great roster to go recreate what last year was.
They do. I don't know what to make of the quarterback because I've watched him just rip Blake Baker's defense to shreds for 3 halves of football over the last 2 years. And I've also seen them just completely go away on offense in the biggest games the last 2 years at the end of the season.
Yeah.
What do I make of that?
I think Marcel, and everyone's saying this, Marcel's got to take the quote-unquote next step. My thing is, like, if we can just raise the floor for Marcel, we got a chance. Like, if we can have it be we get the LSU second half, not the LSU first half from Marcel, like, we got a real chance to be special. I think the thing with him you saw last year, in my opinion, was we saw him try to do too much and try to be the main character when sometimes it might just need to be the supporting act there. I'm really interested to see what this new crop of skilled players on the perimeter looks like with him, because I think they got some. It was high level last year, but they have a different genre right now with Isaiah Horton and his catch radius. That's something that they haven't had there since Noah Thomas, and I think that's going to do wonders for him and hopefully his accuracy. And I mean, last year too, Hunt, like his adjusted passing percentage was 70%. Like he was dealing with top 10 level drops across college football. So him, Aaron Gregory, the freshman, Terry Bussey, if he's healthy, we all know Mario. There's a lot of resources to account for with A&M outside.
Colin Klein moves on to Kansas State, and you promote Holman Wiggins, who hasn't called plays. Is that a concern?
It is. The thing I would say is I think Mike Elko has been anticipating Colin Klein leaving the entire time. I think they knew we have him this year, and that's probably he's taking some job. And so I think
Alma Mater called. That was pretty quick answer.
And even if they hadn't, I think Oklahoma State would have called. I think USF could have been in the mix. I think they knew they weren't keeping him. And so for Mike Elko to anticipate that and say, here's my guy, I am going to nurture and groom for this job when it's his time, I feel a lot more confident in that trajectory here with Holman Wiggins, and also skill talent's pretty good as well.
What do we think about Lane tomorrow? What's the vibe going to be around that?
Dude, if college football's a reality show, he's the main character, huh?
He's something.
I mean, it's the life of Lane right now. LOL, that could be a good one. LOL, hey. Life of Lane. I don't know.
I'll make a note.
Maybe we trademark that. I'm just ready for the circus that it's going to be, man. Like, I don't know that you can adequately prepare for it. I'm sure he'll have a couple of bars in there that are barbs at Ole Miss and probably a line or two about Kirby. So I'm ready for the show. Like, I don't know that it means anything, but I'm ready for the show. That's what he is.
And look, he's going to give his opening monologue, and we'll see how long that is. But then you're at the mercy of the questions. And I'm just curious how many of the questions are going to come from Mississippi media, because that changes everything. He gets a question from somebody in Baton Rouge, like that's generally not going to be a big issue. But if he gets a bunch of questions from Mississippi, that changes that 25 minutes significantly up there.
I bet he's got something in the back pocket anticipating some Mississippi questions, and I bet he's got just a couple of haymakers. Just a subtle, just couple mic drops I think he's got up his sleeve.
How are we feeling about the Tigers this year?
Feel good. I mean, I'm coming off of
we know.
an electric ride, which I'll put down as a DNF as opposed to an L.
Did not finish. There was no finishing.
There was no finish there.
The finishing was done by the Texas A&M Aggies in Tiger Stadium.
Wild.
In an empty stadium, except for the Aggies doing sawing horns off and whatnot. Yes. But yeah, it was not good.
So I'm not picking up the Natty, unfortunately, here for the folks on the conversation with us right now. But I will say, like Michael Scott says, I'm ready to get hurt again. I'm ready to see this roster make a run at the playoff. I mean, it's this back and forth we're all doing right now of like, I love the piece of paper, but I have no idea what that piece of paper roster is going to equate to. It's tough to ignore. I think they'll be a playoff team.
Who's the best team in the league?
I'd love to give you a hipster answer and like give you something outside the box. I think it's Georgia.
What do you make of the narrative? It was so weird. They were first yesterday, and everybody's talking to Kirby about, oh, you've slipped on this, you slipped, and it's like they've won the league twice. They won the SEC championship game by 21 points. They got clipped in the Superdome.
By a dude at quarterback,
I don't know. You're expected to just win every game? I guess they did for 2 years, but it just doesn't seem like they've slipped that much to me.
I think everybody wants that to be the story so bad because I think we're bored of Georgia. Is that fair? I think we're bored of seeing that
Bama
logo at the top of the SEC.
Has yielded to Georgia fatigue.
I think it's a thing. I really do. And I also think, too, we're also conditioned as college football fans to like teams being undefeated in the SC or in the BCS era rather, and in the 14 playoff era. That's not going to happen as frequently. It's funny I say that on the heels of Indiana being 16-0, but I think that's a massive outlier in the larger sample size we'll have here soon.
We appreciate a little bit of time. I'll let you get on back to work.
My guy.
J.D. Pickell, that's the hard count on 3. Doing great work. Appreciate him for giving us a little bit of time here on this Wednesday. We're brought to you by Renaissance Homes and Pools. They're online at builtbyrenaissance.com. That's builtbyrenaissance.com. I always hate when I am getting ready to go to break and don't know where my live sheet is because that just really messes things up. But I have found it, so we're good. We can go to break. We'll come back and close out the hour coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets online at onebathandclosets.com, onebathandclosets.com. Call David Duvall if you've got an issue in the bathroom, if you've got a crack in a shower, if you've got a crack in a tub. It can look insignificant, but what's going on beyond that? Water damage can be very, very, very expensive if it gets in the wrong spot. If you've got a crack in a shower or a pool and you have not made a phone call to get that looked at or fixed, call David Duvall at One Bath and Closets. Go to onebathandclosets.com, reach out to him and let him come in. Maybe it's nothing and he can just repair it. But if there is mold, if there is rotting, if there are significant issues in the walls and the floors and the ceilings, you're going to need a professional to handle that. David Duvall and his team can do it at One Bath and Closets. They're online at onebathandclosets.com, onebathandclosets.com.
Live from the 2026 SEC Football Media Days in Tampa. Presented by Parish Construction and Roofing. FMOL Health, Our Lady of the Lake. Relief Windows. And Red Fiber.
Closing up hour number 1, Wednesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Renaissance Homes and Pools. Let me remind you about GoTro's Outdoor Power. They're online at GoTrosOnline.com. That's GoTrosOnline.com. National Hustler Deal of the Year, 2 of the last 3 years. GoTro family's been running that show for 21 years in Baton Rouge and Gonzales. It's family owned and operated, which gives you that wonderful customer service. But don't think that means they're small. They've got the largest parts inventory in Louisiana, the largest hustler dealer in Louisiana. They've got incredible deals on financing. 0% financing is available, and they've also got an extended warranty. GoTros is the warrantor. You can add 2 years or 200 hours to the manufacturer's warranty over there at GoTros Outdoor Power. So if you need a new zero-turn mower, you need a new hustler, get on by and see them. GoTros Outdoor Power, 2 locations, Airline Highway in Baton Rouge and in Gonzales. GoTrosOnline.com. All right, we're closing up the hour. I don't remember everything I say, but I remember a lot of the things that I say. And this segment is going to sound a little bit different than my initial take on SEC scheduling. When the league expanded, they went to the 9 games, and you're seeing things. And it was reinforced, I think, a little bit today and yesterday, because, like, yesterday we have 4 teams coming through. And I'm looking at it, and I'm going, oh, LSU's not one of them. And LSU doesn't play 3 of these teams. And then I started looking at the schedules. And LSU, do you realize this? LSU next football season will not play Alabama, will not play Mississippi State, will not play Auburn. No Auburn, no Alabama, no Mississippi State. Like SEC West Division stalwarts on the schedule. LSU's played Mississippi State more than any team in its program's history. They're going to go 3 of 4 years not playing Mississippi State. You're not going to play Alabama. You're not going to play Auburn, one of the most storied rivalries in the last 40 years of SEC football. And while I do feel like that playing Texas or playing Georgia is in a way the same thing as playing Alabama or playing Tennessee, but it is a little bit different. And an LSU football schedule that does not include Bama, Auburn, or Mississippi State is weird. And you're replacing them with Oklahoma and South Carolina and Vanderbilt. Like, those are not rivals that you had. And while ultimately it all comes out in the wash, and they did get it back onto a rotation where you're going to play every single team every other year. You have your permanents, which LSU will play Arkansas, they'll play Ole Miss, they'll play Texas A&M. But you lose such a big chunk of your schedule. I don't mind dropping one off here, one off there. That's just a big chunk of what LSU was doing. And it'll still be great. You'll have high-profile matchups, like playing Georgia and Oklahoma and playing, Ole Miss and playing Texas A&M. Like, those are big games. But it's a big change. And it's not as egregious as Stanford playing in the ACC. That's just silly. It's just silly. It's not as egregious as Texas and Texas A&M not playing for a decade, which is crazy. It is a relatively minor thing, but it hit home with me on Monday and Tuesday of this week because of how many teams were coming through. I was like, well, LSU doesn't play them. And I was like, well, let me look. And like this year, you do have the majority of those classic rivalry games. LSU's playing Ole Miss this year. LSU's playing Mississippi State this year. LSU's playing Alabama this year. LSU's playing Auburn this year. LSU's playing Texas A&M this year. Like, you don't play Florida, but you play Arkansas. Like, you got most of the SEC West as it once was constructed. But when I realized that, I thought, well, oh, yeah, it's going to rotate. And then next year, they're coming off. And that is odd. I stopped short of suggesting it's a disaster, because you do have premier matchups, and it all does eventually work out. And you've got to make the dollars make sense, as they say. You've got to chase those TV markets and get those big brands. And I don't think that grabbing Texas and Oklahoma into the league is a negative. And I tell you every baseball season that I love Texas and Oklahoma being involved from a baseball perspective, because that adds 2 more good teams. And every single weekend you look at it, and there's like 4 stellar series every single weekend. And I think LSU going to Austin in a couple of years, and I think Texas coming to Tiger Stadium this year is going to be incredible. It's going to be epic. To see those burnt orange jerseys coming out of that tunnel is going to be awesome to see. Just like it was cool when Oklahoma was there 2 years ago, when LSU went to Oklahoma this past year. And like, there are positives. I'm not trying to like complain and like throw cold water on the whole situation, but it just is odd that that's where we've gotten in sports, because every single decision that we make has to be involved in creating as much money as is possible in this never-ending arms race that everyone's in all the time. And that's why you've got to expand these conferences. And I don't know what comes of it. And maybe one day, and this is a conversation that we'll have until, I guess, it happens, maybe there's a day where you are in one big league that's got Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State in it, and there's only 35 teams in it, and then you kind of schedule like the National Football League, and you kind of throw out the geographical stuff. I don't know if that's the case. When I was in school, you had 12 teams in the SEC, and you played everybody home and away over a 2-year span, and you kept your rivals on your schedule every single year. And now you do play every team in the SEC every other year, but you do roll teams off. And that just is a weird feeling that maybe didn't crystallize for me when they made the announcement, but it certainly did over the weekend. Like, John Sumrall was up there today, and he was lamenting the fact that Florida will not play Tennessee this year. And that's just kind of weird. Like, my childhood, there was no bigger game than Florida and Tennessee. It was Spurrier, it was Fulmer, it was Manning, it was Werfel, it was Grossman, it was Ainge. It was the biggest game, and it was in September every year, and it was just massive. And they're just not playing this year. And like, life goes on. Oklahoma and Nebraska don't play anymore. Texas and Texas A&M didn't play anymore, and we survived. And there are other great games that you'll see year in and year out. But it was odd to me. And y'all know like how I feel about scheduling. Like, give me the easiest schedule possible. I'd like to try to get in the playoffs. And losing Alabama off your schedule is generally speaking, is going to make your schedule more manageable. And I think LSU's schedule will be manageable next year, because I don't think Vanderbilt's going to be some sort of juggernaut, and I don't think South Carolina's going to be very good. But you will have to bring Georgia on the schedule, but you roll Texas off the schedule. And so it all kind of comes out in the wash. But it is odd to think about a schedule that is missing so many SEC West rivalry foes like we'll see next year. But LSU will play a lot of them coming up this year, and we'll talk a lot about the Tigers tomorrow. We'll also talk about LSU in hour number 2. We got to continue our in-depth chart series where we'll go out to the perimeter for LSU defensively and talk about LSU's cornerback position, which is very, very talented and very, very short on depth these days. But we're inching toward the end of our in-depth chart series. We got cornerback, we've got safety. We'll also do some special teams as we get to the end of the week. We've still got 2 more days here of SEC Football Media Days, the end of today, and then tomorrow where LSU will go. Let's see if I can do this by process of elimination. Tomorrow will be LSU, Arkansas, for sure. Those 2 have not gone. I would suggest we still have not heard from Mississippi State. And I'm trying to go geographically, and it's not clicking. What you got? Texas. Oh, Arch. It's going to be circus around here. I'm fascinated how many people stick around. This will be a talking point for tomorrow's show, not necessarily days, but we're up against the end of the hour. Last year was an absolute ghost town on Thursday, so they stacked Thursday with Steve Sarkisian, Arch Manning, and Lane Kiffin. I am curious to see if that works and that a lot of people stick around, because when we finish today, there will be 12 teams that are done, and so their media people could technically pack up and leave. Today's was really crowded because Florida is today, and being in Tampa, there are a lot of Florida media that are here. We'll see what happens tomorrow. It'll be Tigers in the morning session, and we'll talk about that on our show tomorrow. If you missed any of the first hour, catch it on demand. You can find that wherever you find your sound. Just search Hunt Palmer Show. Like, subscribe, rate, review. We always appreciate that. We opened with our Pete Golding reaction. Talked to J.D. Pickell of On3 Sports as well. Talked about John Sumrall and Florida. We still got to have discussion about Texas A&M a little bit later on today. So we got a lot to get to. We'll pause 10 seconds for 3 minutes for national headlines. We'll be back with more. It's a Wednesday edition, Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Renaissance Homes and Pools, built by Renaissance.com, built by Renaissance.com. If you're looking for the pool of your dreams, you just make one call. It's to Renaissance Homes and Pools. You call my guy Joey Blanchard. You say, hey, I'm looking for the pool I've always wanted. Whether that's a cocktail pool on the smaller side, whether that's a huge pool with all the bells and whistles, he can do either one and is happy to do it. He also can help you out with your outdoor kitchen. If you're looking for that outdoor entertainment space as the fall comes upon us, Joey's happy to help you out with that. They are local, and you work with Joey, who's the owner of the company, for the entirety of your journey, whether it's the consultation, the design, the dig, the finish. Joey's there every single step of the way. He's done it for dozens of Baton Rouge residents over the years, and he's happy to help you with it. Check out some of their great work on the website. It's builtbyrenaissance.com. It's Renaissance Homes and Pools. They bring you our Wednesday shows. Or online at builtbyrenaissance.com.